Out. Hello and welcome to Labs 11 and 12, both female reproductive system and then the rest of the gamete formation that we didn't cover in the male PowerPoint. So let's start with the female reproductive system. The female reproductive system, we have, trying to find the best place to start, the ovary. The ovary, okay, that ovary here, you can kind of see it back in here. This ovary is what creates those oocytes that are going to grow and can grow into and develop into that embryo and eventually that fetus. So when that ovum gets released from that ovary, the first thing that we have are these little finger-like processes that are known as fimbriae. Those finger-like processes kind of beat to try to bring that ovum into our uterine or fallopian tube. Same thing, just two different names for the same thing. I usually hear fallopian tube still used more than uterine tube. That fallopian tube or uterine tube, you don't need to know the different parts of it besides what's listed on your sheet. Those fimbriae is going to bring that oocyte. It's going to travel through that uterine tube and eventually it'll go in towards that uterus. If it gets fertilized, it goes to the uterus. If not, the body reabsorbs it still in that uterine tube. So we have the uterus, just like we have the fundus of the stomach, that upper portion, we have the fundus of the uterus. That's that top curve kind of found throughout here. That's that fundus. The next area, the middle area, is that body. So that body is kind of this area through here. The bottom portion of the uterus is the cervix. So this area right here is kind of that cervix area. Then we have the vagina. That is that opening that'll go in towards that uterus. What's helping to kind of hold some of these different things in place, we have the round uterus, or the round ligament, sorry, the round ligament is helping to hold that uterus in place. Just trying to look for the ovarian ligament. We don't see a good ovarian ligament from this picture. So if we come out, there's this clitoris. The clitoris is this little tissue right here. The clitoris is kind of synonymous to the male penis. Same kind of idea. So here's just another image of a lot of these. Here we're getting to the external anatomy. But let's start up here. You can see that ovary much better here. You can see that fimbriae pretty well. Here's that fallopian or uterine tube, that round ligament, that fundus, that body, that cervix, that vaginal canal, vagina. Here's that clitoris. Then we have almost like two little lip areas that we have the labia majora, and then the smaller one is the labia minora. We can see that ovarian ligament that's helping to kind of hold that ovary in place. It kind of follows the same path as that uterine tube. You can see that ovary, that round ligament here that's kind of helping to hold that uterus in place. If we look at it from another view, you can see that uterus, that round ligament, that uterine tube, that ovary, that ovarian ligament that kind of follows along right here, helping to hold that ovary kind of in place. So here you can see that pelvic floor. So that bottom perineum area. You can see that urethra. Behind that urethra is the vagina, and then behind that is that rectum. Now, if we look at an ovary, we can see the different stages of oogenesis happening in an ovary. So we have primary follicles, that primary oocyte, that secondary follicle. You see that actual oocyte there that is leaving. We have this corpus. I was looking for it. It's usually that corpus luteum. This corpus luteum is this area that this is what is left of this after that primary oocyte leaves that ovary. What this is doing is secreting out hormones to help maintain that wall of that uterus, getting it ready for implantation. If that implantation does not occur, that's where we get that corpus albicans. This is kind of what delays, kind of regresses and falls away. Here, if that oocyte gets fertilized, it'll happen in that uterine tube, and then it'll take about a week to travel down to that uterus where it will implant into the wall of that uterus. This is by the second month. Here you can see that embryo at month 2. That embryo is sitting inside, they're inside what is known as the amnion. That's where that amniotic fluid is going to fill up. At this point, we have this chorionic villi. This chorionic villi is kind of this area that's going to eventually turn into that placenta. You can also see that endometrium, that inner layer. Oh, better color. This is that whole inner layer, that endometrium. We also have our myometrium, which is that middle layer, that muscle, myomuscle. See, now we get to that 3rd month. By that 3rd month, actually by the end of the 3rd month is when we call it a fetus. So here we have that fetus. You can see that amnion and that chorion here. Amnion is that inner area, that chorion is kind of that sac. And then we have that placenta. This is where that fetus is getting all of its nutrients, oxygen, getting rid of waste products. This all happens in that placenta. And then by that 7th month, you can still see that amnion and that chorion, that placenta. Well, here we get that umbilical cord. It's kind of hard to see from this image, but you get that fetus again. Here's where we can get some of these better images of these follicles. So this is that mature ovum. So here you see that oocyte. Then you can see everything going on around it. All of this other tissue and everything going on that's helping to protect that oocyte, get it what it needs. So here we have that oocyte. And we have everything that's kind of surrounding it to kind of help protect it. Again, that oocyte with everything kind of helping to protect it as it matures. Here's that oocyte. Everything that's helping. More oocyte here. Here we get to that corpus albicans. That is that corpus luteum that was not needed, so it kind of just fizzled away. Same thing. Here's the different layers of that uterus. You see that endometrium, that inner layer, that myometrium, that middle layer. This is from your lab manual. This is that primary oocyte. Here, I like this because you can see we have the polar body. When these oocytes go through that oogenesis, that meiosis, there's only one viable cell that is created. The other one becomes that polar body. So that's where these polar bodies come into play. Everything else is not really needed. But here is where we get that blastomere, those blastocysts. Is that blastocyst, that first cells that are coming apart, that's that cleavage here where those cells kind of divide apart, then divide apart, then divide apart into all those different layers. Here's a 20-day embryo. I thought these pictures were kind of cool because it shows how this develops, the different areas. This is all from your lab manual. So here's that neural plate. So this is where that brain is going to come in, that neural groove. Here, we're at 24 days. You can start to see that spinal cord start to develop. That heart starting to come out, the brain starting to develop at 24 days. Now we're at 32 days. We've got a tail. We've got those lens placodes. We've got those upper limb buds, those lower limb buds, that heart prominence coming about. Now we're at 44 days. You can see those otic placodes. Those are your ears coming, that umbilical cord forming. You can see those arms and those legs starting to come, that nose. By 52, there's a lot more development. We're starting to see those fingers and those toes. Here's 10 weeks. 13 weeks. This is the end of the first trimester right here, 13 weeks. From here, we go from this embryo to this fetus. 13 weeks to 26 weeks. From here to here, everything is just continuing to grow and mature. So that is everything for the female reproductive system. If I did not point it out, I don't have images to really share for it. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful day.